Hello, I'm Roger Harris. I have a doctorate in information systems from City University in Hong Kong. And for the last 12 years or so, I've been working with rural communities in Asia, helping them to get connected to the internet, setting up community facilities with computers and internet access, and more recently introducing community radio to remote village in Sarawak in Malaysia.
Okay, could you talk a bit about the role that technology plays and how you go about introducing technology into a community and what the significance of that is, what the impact might be?
Yes, actually, my focus is more on local development and grassroots development, and then using technology to facilitate that. So I don't believe in dropping technology into communities and expecting them to make good use of it immediately. I'm much more concerned with the problems and development opportunities and aspirations that the community has, and then working closely with them to find ways in which they can use the technology to help them solve those problems and achieve those aspirations. So my approach is very much based on getting to understand some of the problems and the culture of the people with whom I'm working, and then looking at the characteristics of technologies and selecting the most appropriate one and the way to use it, and facilitating the residents towards using technology for that purpose.
Can you give me some examples? Can you give us some examples?
Well, where I started working is a village called Barrio, which is a community of indigenous ethnic minorities. They're located right in the heart of Borneo. It's in Sarawak, which is one of the Malaysian states on the island of Borneo. So they're Malaysian people and nationality, but they have their own ethnic identity. And I started working there in the late 1990s, and we very quickly found out that many of the problems that they have relate to their ethnic situation and their isolation. And being isolated, of course, any form of improved communication would always be welcome. And in fact, they didn't really have very much by way of communication. There are no roads going there, you have to fly in. So having access to the internet immediately gave them access to all sorts of facilities, not the least their own family members who had left the community, gone and live in the towns, and also access to government and public services, and generally beginning to participate in the information society. So set up a telecentre there in the early 2000s, and that's been running ever since, and it's still operational. And more recently, as I mentioned earlier, we also set up a community radio station so they can broadcast information right into the households of the people living there.
So, what are some of the benefits been this is internet, this is computing, is it you put in? So, what have some of the benefits been?
Well, I guess the most noticeable benefit, I would say two really. One is noticeable, the other one is less noticeable but equally important. Firstly, the noticeable benefit is promotion of tourism in the area. It's a beautiful location. It's highland situated and surrounded by rainforests. So a lot of people come into the area to enjoy the culture, go trekking in the forest and enjoy the natural environment. And tourism has, although it's still very small because it's only a small community and there's limited access because of the number of flights into the area, but generally it's boomed. When I first went there were 5 flights a week into the area. Now there are 2 flights every day. And that has had knock-on effects to the rest of the community. They have much easier access to the towns. They're able to get their produce to the market. When I first went there was one tourist lodge of sorts. Now there are more than a dozen, and they're all doing reasonably good business, bringing in income, creating jobs, and interestingly, creating jobs that women tend to do, working in tourism. So that's had a significant impact within the community, creating jobs, increasing demand for produce from the farmers, and such like. The other sort of less tangible impact is what I call, or relates to, indigenizing development. Orthodox development in many countries assumes assimilation of indigenous and ethnic minorities into mainstream culture. And it's a process that undervalues minority cultures, especially languages. And in the case of Barrio, the Kalabit people, which is the name of the indigenous group living there, their language is under severe threat. It's not heard on any form of public media, and the community themselves are fearful that they're going to lose it. Of course, language is very closely associated with the rest of the culture. So the idea of indigenizing development is to kind of steer development more towards projects and activities that indigenous peoples themselves recognize as being beneficial and which will benefit them rather than harm them. In the case of the Kalabit community, they're surrounded by pristine rainforest, and the environment is under threat from all sorts of directions within the Malaysian context. There's a lot of logging that goes on, a lot of illegal logging, which damages the forest. The land is under pressure in a number of ways, and the indigenous communities really want to preserve their forest because it's important to them, it's important to their livelihoods, and they recognize that those aspects of local development do not carry much weight within national schemes for bringing development to the people. So my approach is to introduce them to these sort of technologies, computers and the internet especially, as well as local radio station, so that they can air these issues. They can use the radio station to broadcast in their own language, for instance, which theoretically will help strengthen use of the language, especially amongst young people. And they can air their concerns about local development amongst themselves and come more quickly towards community consensus in the way that they would respond to those development activities, and at the same time use the internet to reach out to other groups who have similar situations, even globally, because a lot of the problems of indigenous peoples around the world seem to be quite common. They seem to be shared problems, so that they can formulate strategies in connection and coordination with other groups, as well as contacting government officials, local government, federal government officials, and generally airing their concerns and bringing their issues into public sphere and national debate.
There's been some interesting uses of social media like blogging and YouTube in some of the very remote communities. Can you describe that a bit?
Yeah, the project in Barrio received a lot of attention, and it's received support from government with extra funding. The implementers have been able to replicate it in other communities, and more recently another community in the area, which is even more isolated, you have to get in a boat and go down the river to get there. Another ethnic group, they've recently been given access to computers and the internet, and they're using Facebook in an interesting way. I asked some of the members of the community if they had email. They said, well, just go to a Facebook page and send me a message, it'll reach me. So the whole community seems to be using Facebook as their kind of presence on the internet. And whatever you need to know about this community, you'll either find it already on their Facebook page, or if not, you put in an inquiry, you join the group, and all kinds of people will start responding. And in many ways, this is much more effective and efficient than using email. I mean, everybody uses email, we think it's wonderful, but it's kind of one-to-one or one-to-many. Facebook is a many-to-many forum, and these people in Long Lamai, which is the name of the community, they're using it in a very effective and interesting way as a kind of a community repository for communications among themselves, within the group, and between themselves and the outside world.
That's great, Roger. Thank you very much.